former Special Task Force officer becomes the prime suspect in a murder case that puts his family at risk. But as the truth slowly comes to light, he finds himself facing powers far greater than him, forcing him to fight back in order to protect the people he loves. High up on an old building in France, Franck and his teammates strap on their safety gear and rappel down the walls, checking for cracks in the structure. Once the job is done, Franck heads to the hospital with his pregnant wife Leo for her antenatal appointment. Afterward, the two return home happily, but their joy fades the moment they notice their front door is open. Cautiously, they step inside and see their belongings scattered all over the place, as if someone had been searching for something. Disturbed, Leo sadly asks Franck what they should do, since this is the second time it has happened. Franck tells her they'll report it to the police again. Later, when he leaves the house, he meets his friend Ben and discusses the break-in. Franck warns him that whoever did this is only just getting started. The next morning, Franck reports to work. While admiring the view from above, his rope suddenly slips several feet. He manages to hold on and stay safe while his colleague quickly raises the alarm. Franck descends to the ground and chases after a suspicious man, convinced it was no accident. But the man escapes. Alarmed, Franck rushes home to check on Leo, relieved to find her unharmed. That night, while Leo is asleep, Franck climbs onto the roof through their window and pulls out a key hidden inside a pipe. He sits quietly for a while before returning indoors and tucking the key inside the basin drain. Leo, half awake, notices his strange habit and asks why he spends so much time on the roof. Their conversation is cut short by a sudden, violent knock on the door. Within seconds, armed men break into their home. Franck and Leo fight back, but the intruders overpower them and tie them to chairs. Their leader, Vitam, demands Franck reveal where he has hidden the key. Franck refuses to answer. Vitam taunts him, saying exposing the truth won't fix anything or erase his guilt, but Franck remains silent. Furious, Vitam orders his men to abduct both Franck and Leo, separating them into different locations. Almost 10 years earlier, Franck and Leo had just joined the French police. On their induction day, Franck met Manon, the wife of his best friend, Nico. The police chief, Sylvain, pulled Franck aside and handed him a badge engraved with the words Ad Vitam, for life. He explained that Franck's late father would have wanted him to carry it. After this, Franck rejoined the celebration, often exchanging secret glances with Leo. As time went on, Franck, Leo, and Nico grew more ambitious and enrolled in the training for GIN, the elite tactical unit of the French police specializing in counterterrorism. During their training, Franck and Leo grew closer and fell in love, though neither admitted it. On one mission, Leo jokingly asked Franck if they would hold hands. He took the hint, and though the moment was interrupted by the suspects arriving, Franck held her hand during the operation. Together, they successfully made the arrest. Soon after, a new group of trainees joined, including Ben, who struggled to keep up but quickly became Franck's favorite. On the day of Ben's induction, an after-party was held with Franck, Leo, Ben, and Nico's family present. That night, Leo told Franck that she had been waiting for the chance to sleep with him. This was her second clear signal, and this time, Franck didn't ignore it. Back at the apartment, they secretly came together, giving in to their feelings. Later, the team gathered at a park for games and relaxation. Manon had just given birth to her second child. When Leo saw the baby, she admitted she didn't want children. At the time, Franck and Leo were in an open relationship, but her words unsettled him. Later, Nico and Manon advised him to marry Leo, telling him that marriage was one of the best decisions an officer could make. 9 years after their training, Franck, Nico, and Ben were returning from a mission. On the way, Leo called to share the happy news of her pregnancy. But Franck, unaware of what she was about to say, cut her off to take another urgent call from a friend at a hotel under attack. Without hesitation, he and Nico turned their car toward the scene. At the hotel, Franck called Sylvain, who instructed them to gather intel but not engage. Still, the three armed themselves and entered the building. In the lobby, the manager explained that guests had heard gunshots upstairs. Before he could finish, shooters appeared and grabbed a woman as a hostage. Acting on instinct, Frank shot one of the attackers in the head, saving the woman. By then, GIN reinforcements had arrived, but tragedy struck. When Frank found Nico, he was lying in a pool of blood. Ben, badly wounded, witnessed the loss of their friend. Moments later, the police cleared the scene and demanded Frank hand over his weapon and vest. Sylvian, furious, reprimanded Frank for disobeying orders. Frank tried to explain, but Sylvian insisted they should never have entered the hotel. For breaking protocol, Sylvian dismissed him from the team. Frank left the office, staring at his late father's picture in the hallway before clearing his things. Later, he joined the others to mourn Nico. At the funeral, Frank noticed Leo speaking quietly with Sylvian. That night, at home, Leo told him that she had resigned from the force. Frank grew angry, unable to understand her decision, not knowing she was pregnant. Frustrated, he stormed out and went to see Ben, who was recovering from a serious knee injury. Together, they watched the news report. The media claimed the attackers were just thieves, but Ben insisted they weren't. He also revealed that he planned to leave the force since he refused to be stuck doing desk duty. One evening, while Leo and Frank are having dinner at a restaurant, Leo breaks the news in the most surprising way. Over their first meal, she tells him she's pregnant. At first, Frank is stunned, but when she adds that she wants to keep the baby, his shock quickly turns into happiness. With that joy fueling them, the couple begins a new chapter, house hunting until they find the perfect home. But as they start settling in, Frank notices something unsettling. He finds the odd Vitam badge, stained with blood. Realizing it must belong to one of the attackers, he secretly runs tests and uncovers the identity of one of them. When he shares the discovery with Ben, Frank explains that the attacker works for the French General Directorate of Internal Security. Ben instantly realizes this is a government setup and warns Frank to let it go before it spirals into serious trouble. Taking the advice to heart, Frank locks the badge and report in a safe and hides the key on the roof of his house.
Not long after, it's Lucien's birthday, and they plan a surprise party for him. During the celebration, Manon confides in Frank about how hard things have been with the kids. She also mentions that Antoine, the eldest, doesn't even want to be at the party. Concerned, Frank pulls Antoine aside and opens up about his own guilt over Nico's death. But Antoine is furious. He reveals he overheard Manon saying Frank knows something about his father's death, and he demands answers. Shaken by this confrontation, Frank arranges a secret meeting with a reporter. He asks if his identity will be protected if he shares sensitive information, and when the reporter reassures him, Frank reveals that he wants to talk about the hotel shooting. At the same time, the French minister is being briefed by a Secret Service agent about the same incident. According to the agent, 7 months earlier, Colonel Brennan, a former Navy SEAL and CIA operative, came to France to negotiate an arms deal. When the Secret Service learned of this, they sent 2 agents to retrieve files from his hotel room. But what they didn't know was that Brennan had forgotten his key and returned to the room unexpectedly. Naturally, a man like him would always be vigilant. He and his bodyguard immediately realized something was wrong and entered ready to fight. A gunfight broke out, and Brennan was killed. Before the agency could react, the GIGN stormed in and killed one of their agents. To cover the disastrous situation, the agency hid the attackers' identities. Here lies the problem. The agent warns the Prime Minister that Frank has uncovered the identity of their operatives. The Prime Minister wastes no time, authorizes immediate action to silence Frank and clean up the mess. That's when Vanaken and his mercenaries are brought in. From this moment, Frank's life hangs on the fragile scaffolding of political games. Vanaken calls him on video, threatening to kill Leo unless Frank delivers the badge within 4 hours. To make things worse, Vanaken informs him that his colleague Stanislas has been found dead, shot in the head. And because Frank left work in a suspicious manner, he is now the prime suspect. After this, Vanaken's men dump Frank on the road. Frank wastes no time. He races to his house, but finds it crawling with police. Using his skills, he scales walls and rooftops,
like a desperate, unamazing Spider-Man. Once inside, he checks the drain for the hidden key, but it's gone. Just then, a forensic worker returns to grab his phone and stumbles upon Frank. A fight erupts, followed by a frantic police chase. But even with all their training, they can't catch him. Frank escapes and heads straight to Ben. After hearing everything, Ben decides to stand by him. Together, they come up with a plan. They craft a fake badge smeared with Frank's blood and arm themselves. On their way to the meeting point in the forest, Ben secretly slips a tracker into Frank's boots. Frank arrives at the location and waits for Vanaken. A car pulls up and escorts him to a hidden building deep in the forest. Vanaken demands the badge, but Frank insists on seeing Leo first. Vanaken leads him to the back, where Leo sits tied and helpless. Relieved to see her alive, Frank points out the badge's hiding place. But Vanaken twists the plan. He decides the couple must die, framing it as a double suicide. They even prepare a suicide note. With the police closing in, Vanaken leaves his man to finish the job. But at that very moment, a sound echoes from the forest. Distracted, the men go to investigate and Ben strikes, killing them and rescuing the couple. Armed and ready, the trio launch into a firefight. Vanaken hears the gunshots and realizes something has gone wrong. A full-blown gun battle follows, and the trio barely escape in a car, but Vanaken and his men chase them relentlessly. Like Pharaoh pursuing the Israelites with his chariots. During the chaos, Leo is shot in the arm. Knowing Frank is the target, he throws himself out of the car to confront the attackers while Ben speeds off toward a hospital with her. Vanaken orders his man to chase the vehicle while he personally goes after Frank. The tension mounts as the police also swarm the area. Frank shoots 2 officers on a bike and takes their ride, leading to a wild chase. Vanaken follows close behind, and the two end up looking less like enemies and more like rivals racing each other. When Vanaken realizes Frank might actually get away, he calls for reinforcements. Frank eventually ditches the bike and parachutes to safety, leaving a line of humiliated officers behind. But Vanaken refuses to quit. He hijacks a car and turns his focus back to chasing Leo. Meanwhile, Ben calls Frank for updates. Ben tells him Leo has passed out, and though Frank doesn't know it yet, Ben himself is bleeding badly. By now, the GIGN has been alerted, and Sylvian orders them to pursue Frank. Ben finally makes it to the hospital, and Frank arrives just in time to confront Vanaken. In a brutal fight, Frank pummels him until he passes out. Moments later, GIGN agents surround them and order Frank to surrender. But instead of complying, Frank pulls Leo out of the car. Seeing the desperation of a man fighting for his family, the agents lower their weapons and allow him to take her inside. As soon as she's wheeled into the hospital, Frank is arrested. The next time we see him, Frank is both a father and a prisoner. But then Leo steps up. She recalls the quick-thinking move she made during Vanaken's attack, retrieving the hidden key from the basin. Thanks to her, the badge is handed over to the police, exposing the government's dark scandal. Frank is cleared of all charges and finally reunited with his family. Watching from a distance, Ben smiles, relieved to see his friend's freedom restored. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy stories like this. And let us know in the comments which movie you'd like us to recap next.